Wow. Seriously? Okay, so the first and best thing anyone's going to have to say today, by a mile, is our good man, Richard Jankowski, who says, I'm glad nothing happens between now and training camp. Good call, dude. Good call. You know, I'm never going to be able to use that line again because everyone will go, oh, yeah, we heard that. And then the Steelers traded Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins for Jalen, Ramsey, and Jonnu Smith. 3 All-Pros changing hands in a single transaction. It's not just one of the Steelers' biggest trades ever, which it is. It's also the biggest one in the NFL, I would say, in some time. You just don't see stuff like this in this league. And no, Richard, you don't see it at this time of year for sure. But full credit to everyone associated with both the Pittsburgh and the Miami managements for somehow working through this month that usually people don't work through. Tobacco Salad says, I thought just like Minkah was a lifer. Yeah. Yep. Minkah was a lifer. He was signed to be that. And then something happened. Something happened. Or not. Remember that too. Sometimes it's just you're not trading a guy on some sort of punitive basis or because you lost this or that in him or because he doesn't fit anymore or that they signed Juan Thornhill just so that they could eventually trade Minkah or anything like that. Sometimes it's just opportunity. Sometimes it's just you're looking out there to see what the other guys have, what it is that you want and what it is that you need. And I don't think any of us can dispute that the Steelers had a need for another receiver, whether it was a wide receiver or a tight end, and that's something that we've debated on this program for a while. But also, my goodness, just step back from this for a second. Think of the names involved. Think of the resumes involved. Think of the impact that could result on the Pittsburgh end. Both sides of the ball. Both sides of the ball. And then think, and this is the stuff that I'm going to be getting into with Chris Halleck, who's actually heading back on his vacation, from his vacation, back from Texas to Pittsburgh. And yes, he's driving. I don't know why, but he is. And he's safe. Actually, he's in the passenger seat. He'll be joining us after this break to share his thoughts as well. But there's so much to talk about. And I am, this, Charlie says DK's about to be flabbergasted. No, he's been flabbergasted the entire time. And nothing less than that. I did believe, and I shared this with you, that the impact tight end was a possibility. I did say that. I do know of Arthur Smith's belief in Jonnu Smith. I do know that Arthur Smith would have welcomed him under any circumstances with open arms. Well, here are those open arms now. But this other part, I mean, Jalen freaking Ramsey. This is the analysis that you come here for, because that's where I am right now in this analysis. Kick sends us into the break by saying, I'm standing by for DK's hot take on another quiet day before training camp. LOL. Everyone's gone. They've all left the building except for Omar. When we come back, and after I take a sip of what will be a long line of these, we will be joined by a very remote Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
And I don't want to make light of this either as we bring Chris Halleck in here. Ashlyn Gibbs says, emotionally, I hate the trade. reasonably realistically, I love it. Let's remember that Minkah Fitzpatrick, before this past season, when he was placed in center field by the coaching staff, was a beloved and very popular and very, very productive football player in the city of Pittsburgh. I don't want to. There's so much here. Hi, Chris.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, nothing.
Just a gigantic trade, probably one of the biggest in Steelers history, if not the biggest in Steelers history. Biggest since Bettis, maybe?
Biggest since Bettis, yeah. I mean, Ferrier wasn't Ferrier. No, that was a free agency.
Yeah.
No, this is you see 3 All-Pros. It just doesn't happen in the NFL.
No, it really doesn't. It was definitely something that I saw, obviously the first report come out and saw it was Jalen Ramsey. I'm like, all right, well, here they go. They pulled the trigger, and then you see Minkah Fitzpatrick's the main return going back. It's like, okay, this is different. this changes everything. But it's definitely a gigantic trade, and man, they have. One thing you can't say is that there was some urgency for change. I know they didn't do it with Mike Tomlin, but man alive, that roster has changed a lot since they got their stuff kicked in by the Ravens in January.
Well, Chris, let's go big scope first, okay? Because I'm not going to lie to you. My first thought when this happened was, my very first thought, like 32,000 feet thought, was, oh, this actually is it. Like the thought that you had when Aaron Rodgers put pen to paper.
Yeah.
Well, okay. There's no other reason you acquire Rodgers if you're not going for it that year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to say they're going all out Rams here, because they haven't sent out like 700 draft picks. In fact, it's the opposite. But when you look at this, I don't know how else to think of this other than, okay, everything is in. Everything is in here. And you know what? They probably aren't done.
No, I don't think they're done. I wouldn't rule out something like a Gabe Davis signing later not that that's gigantic or anything like that, but it's another weapon, if he's healthy, if it's on the other side of the starting training camp or sometime in August, whenever that is, or if Omar just continues to pull out the big guns and he pulls off a trade for a bigger guy, who knows at this point. But yeah, you cannot question whatsoever that they are doing everything they can to try to win a Super Bowl in 2025. But like you mentioned, they're doing it without mortgaging the future. They did a late round pick swap in 2027 and still have every single draft pick that they have for next year.
I'll take one question here for the group here before we get to some a pretty neat little thing that we have to add to the program today here, which is, I had it here a second ago. Start over here. Yeah, this is the one from Denny. He says he's wondering if what happens here with Jonnu Smith, affecting Connor Hayward. Does he just replaces Donald Parham, doesn't he? Well, no, not really. But also, on top of that, what about the positional effects on this, on both sides? Because we don't even know where Ramsey's going to play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He spent so much time in the slot. Defensive backs his age end up getting moved to safety. We don't even know. And then on the offensive side, what happens to, it's not so much what happens to Connor Hayward as much as it is what happens to Darnell Washington, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I was going through the comments on our site on DKPittsburghSports.com, and when I was going through it, I'm like, well, listen, they're going to have a really dangerous pass catcher at tight end out there almost all the time now, because at any time they can have Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, or they can have Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington, or they can have Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. Like, they can have a number of combinations in which they've got themselves a dangerous pass catcher at tight end. It doesn't matter if they're, if they're in 12 personnel, 13 personnel, obviously you're going to have, at 2 possibly. So it's going to be a number of things that Arthur Smith can do with tight ends now. So I think I think people are going to be like, no, that doesn't mean they're going to use Darnell Washington as much. Man, when we saw how often the tight ends were rotated last year,
right,
he's still going to be used plenty.
Just remember, every time you clenched your fist at a target to Michael Pruitt, and that's
right.
That'll support that point right there. A little bit of an announcement to make on today's program here, and not just the trade, because that would kind of qualify as its own thing here. We have a sponsor. We do have a sponsor. Yeah, look at Chris's face there. That's his face whenever we get a new sponsor. They're called Dazzle Sports. They're from the central part of the state. And what they are, I'm gonna read this out loud here to you here. That they sell prize jerseys, okay, like real live good stuff, autographed photos, keepsakes, professionally custom frames. Dazzle Sports makes them shine, from the NFL to Major League Baseball to the NHL, everything in between. Shop autographed memorabilia from your favorite athletes, including jerseys. It's dazzle-sports.com. Okay, the inventory has Steelers, all the college teams, Paul Skeens stuff, you name it. Dazzle Sports has it's not the stuff that we do is a lot more localized and so forth here. What they're more into the memorabilia and stuff like that. We don't have any of that. Custom framing, autographs, cards, collectibles. It's a dazzle-sports.com. Use the code double shot. Make it one word. Double shot whenever you check out to get a 20% discount. I'm not making that up. 20% discount on your order. One more time, I'm going to say it. It's actually, you know what? I'm going to do better than that. Oh, it's at the bottom of the screen down there. The boss has it on the ticker. Dazzle-sports.com. Brand new sponsor. Support them. Let them know you're with us. Double shot, one word, is the discount code. We're going to leave that down there as Chris and I continue to just marvel at the news today. Dan West wants to know, was there locker room tension that we don't know about? I thought Minkah was a staple in the leadership. How will this affect chemistry? Oh, my goodness. The respect that is in that room. And I know Chris is going to see this one any differently. For number 39 was through any figurative roof you can describe, and it's not just the players. I have said this to you before. Minkah was a de facto extra coach out there. If you've seen any of those NFL film scenes where Minkah is, even when he was hurt, he was standing along the sideline suggesting stuff to the coaching staff, and it would just play out the way he expected. His football intellect is, I don't know, unrivaled or whatever. I'm not in a position to measure people's IQs, but this was a truly, truly special Steeler for a long time. And no issues. Zero.
Yeah, no issues in that room with Minkah. This trade was not about parting ways with Minkah Fitzpatrick. It was more about acquiring Jalen Ramsey. Of course, you do have to kind of look at, okay, where does Minkah fit? Where is Minkah in his career? Is he on the back nine? Is he going to ever get to that point where he can be tied for the league lead in interceptions again? Or can we really load up a cornerback, have Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey, and have the best group at cornerback they've had in a long time? I don't even want to try to think about the last time they had this kind of talent, and established talent at the position, and tried to make do with what's there at safety. And who knows, maybe Jalen Ramsey ends up playing a good amount in the slot and at safety. We have to see how it plays out. But this was definitely more about acquiring Jalen Ramsey. And plus, when you look at the contract that the Steelers had to pick up when it came to getting Ramsey, you had to make it work when it comes to the salary cap. And Minkah was a highly paid player, and you'd probably rather allocate that at a cornerback than a safety when you have the option to choose between one of the two. And so I think this kind of works out for both teams, honestly. And so I'm sorry. It's still amazing.
I know, that's the way we're both still reacting. Clay says, who's going to be replacing 39? The whole reason Deshaun Elliott was so impactful was the strength of the overall position. And if I'm looking at this, there are questions that have to be answered that we don't have yet, such as what actually will Jalen do? Is Jalen going to be an inside-outside, slot/outside corner option, as he was, by the way, this past season? Took a lot of snaps at the slot corner position. If that's the event, is Thornhill your guy in the back, and Dejan still stays, uptight, fairly tight to the line of scrimmage? Is that the case, or do they have something totally different in mind for Ramsey? I'd be kind of surprised if they just went, let's make Ramsey a safety. You know what I mean? Like, you get somebody of that caliber, the last thing you want to do is say, hey, by the way, try a whole new thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think what has me curious here, and this is where I think it kind of boils down to, is you're going to see a lot more man coverage this year. When you have that kind of talent at corner with Joey Porter Jr., who's a man coverage guy, and Darius Slay, who's a man coverage guy, and Jalen Ramsey, who is a man coverage guy, you're going to see a lot more man coverage. And I think whenever you see that, you can afford to be a little weaker at safety. I think when it comes to schematics, the Steelers, we have yet to see it play out. But my theory early on is that this might be the thing that they need to make themselves a little bit more modern when it comes to today's NFL. What
do you mean by that?
So today's NFL, today's football, the cover four is being used a lot more than it ever has. And cover four sounds like, oh, you're just running four guys deep. It's not a good coverage to try to defend the run. That's actually not true, because safeties, you can have as many as 9 down defending the run. If safeties see that it's run, they need to touchdown and go. But cover four is with man principles. So you have the ability to read essentially what the offense is doing and then react to what the receivers are running. And it's a really, really good coverage for what it's really a good job.
And we're starting to have some connection issues there with Chris. We're having some trouble, Chris. I'm gonna have to interrupt you here, unfortunately. Roger Bain says, did anyone anticipate Minkah being traded? Was there friction? No. The general and accepted premise that trades have to be the result of some negative thing, as in, if a fan is yelling in the upper deck, trade the bum, is almost never, not almost never, it's rarely true. It was in the case of George Pickens, which might be why it's fresh in everybody's mind. It's just not the case here. There's just no chance of that. Now, I say that, and I want to throw in one little asterisk here as it relates to Minkah, as far as any sort of this or that. I will be extremely interested to hear what Minkah says on the subject after he's in Miami and speaks with the South Florida press, because Minkah has always been a guy who's got everything out in the open. He's not somebody who holds back what he's thinking. And Minkah did say at minicamp, and I'm not trying to make something here, okay? I'm just sharing with you. He did say at minicamp, as it related to the way he was utilized last season, that that was something that was, out of his control. He didn't rip it. He didn't tear it apart, but he also didn't sound like he was giving it some ringing endorsement. He did what he was asked to do. So, yeah, Danny says he looked unhappy. No, Minkah looks like that all the time. Minkah he's just a super serious dude. Never, ever read into that. I guarantee you the day that Minkah would win a Super Bowl, you wouldn't know the difference between that and the day that he had his worst loss. That's just the expression that he's got. I'm kind of surprised here, Chris, if we can pick you up again, that so much of this has been about Minkah. I didn't see that coming, meaning the reaction from the chat world here.
Yeah, it really is interesting, because I've been kind of noticing the reaction, and it has been more about losing Minkah than it has been about acquiring Jalen. And I mean, it's no surprise, but then again, over the last 2 years, we've been seeing a lot of fans being upset with how Minkah's produced, and hasn't been there. He's had 1 interception, and now here it's like, my thought is, if they're not going to utilize him correctly, you might as well just go ahead.
Might as well. We said this. Yeah, is it you have 19, 20, whatever the actual cap hit is, $20 million tied up in somebody that you weren't utilizing to maximum effect. So, I mean, that part of it does make sense. It also seemed like it could have been solved without moving him, but nonetheless, let's switch up here to Ramsey. Okay, let's switch up to what makes him special, not the stuff that we already know about. We've seen, my goodness, stuff that Jalen Ramsey has been able to do in his NFL career. What is he at this stage of his NFL career, Chris? Regardless of position, just what kind of football player is he?
Well, that's the thing. I can't wait to dive into the tape, and as soon as I get back from, I won't even be back till tomorrow. That's how long the drive is, but. As soon as I get back, I'm going to be diving into the tape on Ramsey. But obviously, he's a guy who just he kind of fits a Steelers mold, honestly, with the way he plays. He's so physical. That part of it hasn't changed. I just wonder if like the dip in production with him or the dip in like play for Jalen Ramsey has been just being in a bad situation, because that was a bad Miami team, and Miami seems to be getting even worse. To be completely honest, I'm not saying that Minkah makes them worse or anything like that, but they're just, I don't see how they're going to get out of that hole. But maybe it's just a bad situation with Miami. Obviously, he wanted out, but he definitely fits a Steelers mold. He can blitz off the edge. It's something that they can do with him out of the slot. He fits just a tough man coverage guy who's going to be aggressive, who's going to be physical, who's going to try to make tackles, who's going to be able to blitz every now and then. This is a guy who can still do all of those things. And just from the little bit of research that I was doing, he's still able to blitz and be, I think he had like a 1 sack and 3 or 4 hurries and like 3 passes defensed. He can still do a lot in a number of different ways. He's not just a guy you can leave on an island out there. He can do a number of things.
Now, we're still focused on Minkah here in the chat. Phil wants to know, did Minkah have an idea this was coming? Here again, if he did, you are talking about the ultimate poker face. I talked with Minkah both on and off the record at minicamp. He was just Minkah. I don't know how else to describe. Chris, try to explain what I'm saying here. This is not someone who shows his cards.
No, it's not. I mean, he just every time, even having off the record conversations, probably the most that Minkah and I ever had that was like not football related when it comes to an off the record conversation was like us trash talking each other because I'm a Chelsea fan and he's a Liverpool fan. That was probably the most it ever got to when it came to stuff. And even then that lasted about 30 seconds. Just conversations don't last a long time. He's a very all business guy when he's in the building.
Yeah, Denny says we all assumed that Minkah was on the untouchable list. I don't know I don't know why anybody would have assumed that, like Cam or TJ. Who else is on this list? I've gotten a lot of this today too, and Jay Moods echoes it. Says this trade makes me worry about TJ Watt. I know it's an unreasonable fear, but I didn't see Minkah going anywhere. No. If anything, Jay Moods, this really should be the polar opposite of that. I'm gonna restate something that I brought up at the outset of the show, and that is the 32,000-foot view here. And that is they are going for it. Okay? That's the only reason you do any of this. And the last thing you do in that context is trade TJ. Because you're either getting a roster player for TJ, which would be weird. Like I've seen some people say, oh, trade TJ and get a wide receiver. You can get a wide receiver without giving up your generational annual DPOY guy. So no, this would not. If anything, this only bolsters signing TJ, keeping TJ, and all that other stuff, doesn't it, Chris? I don't know. I'm gonna ask you.
Oh no, he's not going anywhere. You don't make this kind of a move and then trade your best player. I mean, like as good as Minkah was, even at his peak, which we haven't seen again for 2 years, we haven't seen that. It's not TJ Watt. TJ Watt has been a defensive player of the year. He probably should have won at least one other one, if not 2 other ones. Like this guy he's different. Nobody is on TJ's level. The only guy who would come close right now would be Cam Hayward. And yeah, no, TJ's untouchable. He's not going anywhere.
Damien
Any
says
speculation about a trade is just
Chris, you'll love this one. Damian says, we wanted changes. We got them. That was what Chris said when he came aboard today. I mean, that's exactly what this is. A lot of this, it's not change for the sake of change. Okay, I wouldn't think of it that way. I don't think there's any reason to think of it that way. I say that it's much more about, and I'm going to get specific here because I will also say when I think that there's a transaction that is just a negative one that I pin on the head coach, I think this is one of those ones. This is also on the head coach, but isn't necessarily a negative. This is the head coach saying, I don't know. I'm going to take this too far, but I'm going to say, what if it's Mike Tomlin saying, hey, listen, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here with Cam and TJ. Okay. I've had it. We got to start winning something. I got to start winning something. I got to win a playoff game. If I win one playoff game, then I'm just 2 away from where I really need to be. I just feel like there's something there. I feel like there's something there and that it emanates from a single individual, and that's Mike Tomlin.
I don't think you're far off. I mean, Mike Tomlin obviously wants to win, and I think and we've even said this, as much as fans are frustrated about going 8 seasons in a row without winning a playoff game, I can tell you that Mike Tomlin is more frustrated about it than anybody who puts on a Steelers jersey or any Steelers memorabilia and shows up at Acrisure Stadium to cheer the team on. He wants to win more than anybody else. That's just who he is. He's thinking about trying to win a Super Bowl 365 days a year. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he's behind this. But also, kudos to Omar Khan in terms of making all-in type of moves without mortgaging any of your future, because they still have cap flexibility. They still have the 12 projected draft picks next year. And even if they use one of those to get a wide receiver to make this year's team even better than it is on paper, you still have 11. You still have enough firepower that we've been talking about to go get a franchise quarterback for the future. Like, this is like not what the Rams did, because the Rams gave up everything to go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, right. Rams sold off all their children and everything. That's not what this is. This was an exchange of veterans. This was a you need this, we need that, and they made the swap work. And they made it work obviously within the cap. Not to mention taking care of people who might have been happy here or unhappy there. There was all kinds of reporting out of South Florida about both Ramsey and Smith, and not necessarily being ecstatic with where Miami is right now. Brett Caruso says #1 defense in the league. I don't know. I mean, you still got to go out there and do it, okay? And you still got to have just to throw out an example here, Derek Harmon has to be an impact player, and he has to be that right away. Okay, I think that's a tall ask of a kid just stepping into the NFL, who's learning stuff. Now, he's learning from one of the best to ever do it, but okay, still, it's going to be a challenge for him. But let's try this, Chris. Is the defense better today than it was yesterday?
I think so.
Oh, you hesitated. I saw you. You hesitated. That wasn't the lag. That wasn't the online lag. You hesitated.
No, I really do think so. I mean, when you look at even though a lot of it's unproven, they're still deeper at defensive tackle than they were last year, or even yesterday. I mean, obviously the big move is Jalen Ramsey, and again, I look at Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Would I rather be a little weaker at corner or a little weaker at safety? I would rather be a little weaker at safety. I'd rather have those cornerbacks. I mean, the Steelers found it last year. You can sign a safety for 2 years, $6 million, and get Deshaun Elliott, who ends up being the best tackling safety or best tackling player ever in the history of NFL Next Gen Stats. I mean, you can find great safety play for really cheap. It's so much easier to find that. Who knows? Maybe Juan Thornhill is finally healthy and he plays average. And if you have average Juan Thornhill, if you have average Juan Thornhill and really good Deshaun Elliott, but amazing cornerback play, you will take that over what you possibly would have had.
No, I think that's a point that you've been making consistently, is that you're gonna value excellence at the corner position over excellence at safety. particularly as it applies to the way that Minkah was utilized this past season. Mike points out here, for those of us who keep talking about Ramsey as if he's really old, Ramsey's 30. He's not coming here the way Pat Pete did. He's not coming here even, the way others have, in their 30s. And we talk about these guys as if they're fossils. Conditioning is what it is in the modern in the modern world of sports, not just the NFL. Greg wants to know, has Ramsey been on his good behavior? I mean, we haven't had time to go digging through his, being fair here to the guy. Let's presume yes. Lester Holmes says Stephon Gilmore is an older corner who still plays at a high level. Ramsey can do the same. All I know about Ramsey is what I know, and that's from watching him as a football fan and on those occasions where we've had an opportunity to cover him. And he is impact and a half. Okay. And even if he's, let's say, I don't know, Chris, 10% less than what he was at his peak. No, you're shaking. No,
yeah,
I can't kid.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I just try to mute because of all
Sure.
the sound of driving and everything. No, absolutely. I mean, if he is 90% of best ever All-Pro Jalen Ramsey, I mean, come on, we're talking probably second team All-Pro. I mean, this is a guy who has been at his peak one of the 5 best cornerbacks in the league, and if he's anything close to that, and then you've got Joey Porter Jr., who's possibly going to be taking a step forward, who's definitely going to have who better to learn from, by the way, in that locker room, if you're Joey Porter Jr., than Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay.
Unreal.
Like, come on. Like,
what a room. Dude, what a room. Picture walking into that room. Like, if you're Corey Trice, one of the younger guys, and you just walk in there and go, what the heck? Look at this. Jim Kuhn wants your assurances, Chris, that you are a passenger and not driving. I could say that I would never allow anybody to do that on any of our shows or anything.
My beautiful bride is the one driving.
There she is. She looks super serious too. She's got Minkah face right now. Let's switch to the other side of the ball, Chris. Let's do that. We've talked a lot about the defense so far. Jonnu Smith, how is he a throw-in? Does anybody know what Jonnu Smith's statistics were this past season? I'm going to find them right now, Chris, while you talk a little bit about what it is that he can do, what it is that he can bring to an offense, and what he's done in the past with Arthur.
He's caught a lot of passes, that's for sure. Last year, I think he caught 88 passes.
I have it here. 88 catches for 884 yards. That was an average of 10 per catch, obviously. He had a long of 57. He had 8 touchdowns. The thing that stands out about Jonnu, and there are a couple of asterisks on here because I looked into him quite a bit a couple of weeks ago when his name started coming up. He finished 4th in the NFL among all tight ends for receiving yardage. Now, he also finished number 1 on the Miami team for receiving yardage. That's because they had nothing going on. They either had to throw to him or they didn't get anything done. But at the same time, he's comfortable in that role. And if you have him and Pat both out there, which you had better, do you even need a WR2? Somebody's going to have to ask it.
Well, I think you still need one just in case, because again, if DK Metcalf goes down, you're asking Calvin Austin to be your number 1, or Robert Woods, or Roman Wilson. No, you gotta have another guy in the mix at receiver. But I mean, Jonnu Smith, man, he is absolutely he's been that guy who's, he was in the same offense with Kyle Pitts under Arthur Smith in Atlanta. I mean, you talk about 2 dangerous weapons at tight end being able to catch passes. I mean, he's done it before, and I think Arthur Smith is going to be able to take some of the things that he did with Pitts and Smith in Atlanta and implement it in this offense.
There's a few questions here about how Smith can be utilized in the offense. Can he be a receiver? Can he ever line up in the slot? Smith has lined up in many different locations along the line. I know that for a fact. I don't know that you could just say to him, a lot like we're talking about Ramsey here, hey, you who've been very successful at doing this thing for many years, let's do something else now that you're with us. I just don't think it's a great idea. But I do wonder, and I feel this is a fair thing to bring up, what happens to Darnell Washington? Does he just become sixth man? Does he become the de facto babysitter for Broderick Jones, to help out? Do you go with three tights? Do you do that? Three tights and DK, and then look at your line of scrimmage with those guys. You want to talk about the whole Andy Weidel feeling like we're a good football team when we step off the bus. That's a pretty neat visual.
Yeah, the one thing you could definitely say on the offense is that they definitely added a lot of size and physicality to that side of the ball with DK Metcalf and now Jonnu Smith and Caleb Johnson at running back, and you got a lot of size and physicality on that side of the ball. So, but again, I think you can do a number of things, and Arthur Smith's going to be able to do a number of things with tight end. Pretty much be able to do the same tight end rotation he had last year or something similar to it, but to do it with a better group of tight ends. You're going to, instead of having Michael Pruitt out there as your fourth, now Connor Hayward's your fourth. And instead of having, Connor Hayward as your third, now it's Darnell Washington as your third. And again, your 1 and 2, whatever order you want to put them in, is Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith, two guys who have caught a lot of passes in the NFL and can, exploit the middle of the field? Maybe, just maybe.
So I saw just a moment ago here, and unfortunately I lost the comment where somebody brought up that, if they only utilize the tight ends 24% of the time last year, what's the point of doing this? You don't have Russell Wilson now. You don't have Russ being afraid. I don't know if afraid's too strong a word. He's an NFL quarterback. You don't have Russell Wilson avoiding throwing the middle of the field. Okay. And that alone will make a big difference. And that'll make a big difference whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, depending on how their statuses are, health status, and all that other stuff. You have a couple of quarterbacks that are going to throw to the middle of the field. That's a very big difference unto itself for this offense. And I see a lot of comments about, Arthur Smith has to be happy about this. Arthur Smith had to have been involved in this. Of course. Slim wants to know if Jonnu Smith is Arthur Smith's son. And I know he's being facetious, but at the same time, Jonnu Smith has followed Art everywhere. Okay. There's wherever Arthur Smith, like if Arthur Smith were to walk through this door right now, Jonnu Smith would be right there behind him. Okay. That tells you, and I'm sure it tells the Steelers management and coaching staff, there's a trust here. There's a real trust in this football player and who he is. Not just as a tight end, not just as a pass catcher or anything, but a trust in who he is and how he fits with the Smith scheme, which should also tell you that they would trust him to do what needs to be done in the running game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, having Jonnu Smith and having the experience he has in playing under Smith in both Tennessee and Atlanta, that again, it's like having. I mean, there's probably a reason Michael Pruitt was brought in last year. It's because he had experience playing under Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith likes to have guys who know how to play in his offense. Now you just have a much, much better player being that guy who's able to come in and play a lot and do a lot of the things that Arthur likes to do. And now you're doing it with a quarterback who's doesn't necessarily throw to the middle of the field a lot, but is more than willing to throw there whenever the play call is that's where it's supposed to go. He's not going to continue to check out or continue to be like, no, I'm not going to throw there. I'm just going to read the one. If the one's not there, then I'm going to check it down because I don't want to even try to throw it to the middle of the field. That's not what Aaron Rodgers does. And so now you've got two tight ends in Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth who can do a number of things. They can attack the seam. They can run the little quick game stuff, whether it be drags or stick or slants or whatever it is. There's a number of things that Arthur Smith can do with those two guys. I do kind of wonder what's going to happen at receiver now. I do think that they could still make a move. I think they should still make a move. But, shoot, man, it's June 30th. We have a long way to go at this rate with the kind of moves that are being made.
Yeah, there's a long way to go as far as WR2 goes, and one of the things that we've both said on this show consistently is that that's a lot more likely to occur either during training camp or even late in training camp when you see teams, in parentheses here, Green Bay, start moving on from an overflow of wide receivers, which like the Packers absolutely have, and they don't know which one they'd want to do without. They don't know if they can trust all of the young guys that they brought in so that they can move a veteran out. There's a long way to go between now and when you have to get or will get WR2. As it is, my goodness, there are more weapons on the offense now than there were yesterday. I don't think we have to wonder whether or not the offense is better, whether it's more solid. For those of you who aren't members yet, by the way, we have a ton of people in here today, which is not surprising given the news. I see 3,500 live at the moment. Become a member to that of our YouTube channel. It's dkps.net/join. And in case you arrived late, I want to make sure that I hit this one a couple of times today because they're brand new. We have a sponsor. We really do. Dazzle-Sports. Never even asked for one. Dazzle-Sports.com. Get your prize jerseys, your autographed photos, your keepsakes, professionally custom framed, sports or personal. Dazzle Sports makes them shine, from the NFL to the NHL to Major League Baseball, everything in between, all that stuff. Go check them out and make sure that when you do that you use the code. This is important. Double shot, one word, at checkout. That'll get you a 20% discount on their stuff. Go check it out. If you need it to look again at what it is that I just said, we have it running across the ticker on the bottom there. Safety. Do you bring back Terrell Edmonds? Don't worry about safety. Really, don't worry about safety. Am I wrong, Chris?
No, I would not worry about safety right now. You got one Thornhill who can immediately slot in as a free safety, and then you can do whatever. I mean, shoot, you can try to call Justin Simmons in free agency and see if he's interested. Maybe you get him on a cheap deal. He's done a lot of good things in his career. Didn't do so well in Atlanta last year. Who knows? Maybe you could try that. Maybe Sebastian Castro turns a lot of heads. Maybe he's the next guy, undrafted guy who turns heads at training camp. You never know. But again, I'd rather have to figure that out at safety than have to figure it out at cornerback. And my gosh, they don't have to figure out. Not only don't have to figure it out at cornerback, they're now, I would say, loaded at cornerback.
Trevor White says, DK, can we talk about how Jonnu Smith is the same build as DK Metcalf? He can really be a wide receiver for us. I'm just picturing going into that locker room and seeing all these ridiculous frames. This is going to be the biggest. I tell you this right now. This is going to be the biggest Steelers team I've ever covered. Okay, when you factor in the size of these wide receivers and the tight ends, and the other guys just being the normal size for their positions, it's remarkable. You know, Josh Dobbs says Jonnu Smith does not look like a tight end. He also does not behave like one in the sense that he is a great receiver. I don't know that there's been enough excitement about Jonnu Smith coming here. This is a real, live, big-time player. And I see some cynicism about Smith's statistics being up last season, in large part because of the way, as I mentioned, that Miami was forced to utilize him. But at the same time, you still have to do it. You still have to make the 88 catches for 888 yards and 10 touchdowns. The PEF comes in and says, Jonnu is an awesome addition to the offense, but this is a 2 dogs, 1 bone scenario, maybe 3 dogs. I see 2 in this mix where it comes to pass catching. Do you?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the only thing that I think of, actually, no, it's not the only thing, but one of the first things I thought of whenever this came down, whenever this went down, and Jonnu Smith was officially part of the trade was, don't the Ravens have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely? Don't they have a really good 2-headed monster at tight end?
And it kills you. It kills you when they're coming down the field. It kills you.
Yeah.
As a fan, I'm talking about you. When you see and you go, come on, man. Why did they go and get Isaiah Likely? That wasn't fair. We had enough trouble with Mark Andrews. But it's true. It's totally true. And that is, people talk about what's the Arthur Smith signature on an offense. This is it.
Imagine what Arthur Smith would do with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely at tight end. That's all I got to say. Now, I'm not saying that it's better than what Baltimore has, because Mark Andrews is the best of those four that we've just mentioned, but it's not like Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith is a bad pairing whatsoever. This is going to be one of the better pairings of tight ends in the NFL. It just is. I mean, they're two very catch-first guys. I have yet to see how it's going to play out, how often they're going to have just straight-up 12 personnel, how often is Pat going to be in the slot or Jonnu going to be in the slot, how this is going to work. But sometimes, from Omar Khan's perspective, it's not about how is this going to work. It's about, I'm just going to get a whole bunch of talent, and I'm going to let my future Hall of Fame coach work this out, because that is his job. I'm going to get you a lot of talent that can fit the way you want to play football, and now you can go figure it out. So that's what he's done, and my gosh, this has been a heck of an offseason for the Steelers.
We're going to take a couple more from you guys today. Slim says, hey, DK, if you were Omar Khan, would you have made this trade? My answer to that is yes, and I would say it in part for a negative reason. I would say it in part because, and I've been saying this for months, if you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick and you're not going to use him, you might as well give him to somebody else. It's like that great toy, or one of the toys that Andy had in his front yard in Toy Story that he ended up giving away to the kids. Remember, in the box? Was that Toy Story 3? I think it was the end. I don't want to give it away. Give away the ending of Toy Story 3. But that's what Andy was doing. He's like, I'm just going to give the toy to somebody else. That's what you're doing with Minkah here. If you guys can utilize him, and we weren't using him at all. He was selling popcorn, to the people 30 yards off the ball. Then, yes, I make the trade. The only concern I would have had, Slim, to be honest with you, and Chris referenced this already, is if you were giving up future assets, if you were doing something to hurt the Steelers in the longer term. I don't believe that's the case here. I really don't. You're moving one veteran All-Pro for two veteran All-Pros and a small exchange of late-round picks. Okay, that's all that you have here. It's a compartmentalized trade. Okay, it's all one. It's right here in one box. It's still Andy's box.
Yeah, no, exactly. What's the old saying when it comes to trades? In order to get something, you have to give something up. You have to give up something. You had to make the money work. You don't want to necessarily have to trade away Minkah Fitzpatrick, but again, if you weren't going to use him the way he's going to be used, and you want to play more man coverage, it makes a lot more sense for you to be loaded at cornerback than to have an all-pro safety being misused. And maybe this is a sign that the Steelers are going to become a little bit different than they have been in years past, but we'll see.
I mean, I do get the sense, even just talking to you right now, that you could have an offense that would involve, I can't believe I'm about to use this word, rhythm. You could actually see, do this, run this, Caleb Johnson here, Jalen Warren. Too many Jalens now. Jalen Warren running in that direction. DK Metcalf. Isn't it amazing how the acquisition of Metcalf has remained an afterthought pretty much for the bulk of the offseason? How do you get a $150 million football player and just forget that he's there? But I do that all the time.
Yeah, because we talk about when the moment that happened, I was, that's the trade of the offseason until June 30th, and then that becomes the trade of the offseason. So it's crazy. But it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around it sometimes. But it's what it is.
Now, Williams says, do the Steelers now go get a Tyler Boyd or an Amari Cooper? Does this give them time to wait? I'm going to reiterate, it gives them time to wait. If they wanted Tyler's here, man. Okay, Tyler's available. If they wanted Cooper, they already would have made an overture. At least, with what was his name from Davis that came up?
Gabe Davis,
Gabe Davis came up, for a visit. They actually had a legit interest in him. I mean, he came up to get medically checked out. Obviously didn't work out for him or anywhere really for him. But at least it shows you that they were interested. If they wanted these other guys, they'd have them in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I don't think the door is completely shut on Gabe Davis. I just think that obviously that day, that was not a situation in which they were going to be like, yeah, we're just not like, we're not going to let him leave without a contract. They obviously didn't feel great about the way the medicals looked. It probably was a situation in which they were like, let's revisit things in another month or two. You're still unsigned and it's August 10th, August 15th, whatever it is. We'll give you a call, whatever the date, but I'm just, man, it would not surprise me if that ended up being the case. But also, I think the Steelers want to keep their options open. They might have, a better, who knows, maybe the Saints get the training camp. They're like, oh, screw this. We're just going to blow everything up. Let's trade Chris Olave. Or the Packers get the training camp. They're thinking about trading Romeo Doubs, but then one of their other receivers goes down. They're like, yeah, no, never mind. We're not trading Romeo Doubs. Who knows? That's why teams have some patience when it comes to certain trades. But in this case, with the Dolphins, Jalen Ramsey wanted out. The Dolphins came out and said, we're going to honor that and we're going to move him. So something's got to get done. I'd like for something like that to get done before training camp. And lo and behold, they got done.
This is what a day. What a day it's been for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The last question for the day here comes from Jake, who's about to become a member. I can sense this. Jake is about to, right after the show, he's going to type in dkps.net/join to become a member of this channel and join this one-of-a-kind community. Jake says, but is taking target share from Pat Freiermuth a good thing? It's not like we were particularly run-heavy last year in practice. We almost threw at a 50, in practice, it's as opposed to practice. Okay, we almost threw at a 50-50 split rate. What's the identity then? I'm telling you, Jake, the identity needs to just be Arthur Smith, okay? And within that, the four-time MVP at quarterback, whatever, I don't mean, that's another guy we barely even mentioned today is Rodgers. But he's still going to be the guy, Rodgers, who has this weaponry. And by the way, don't dismiss the idea that Rodgers would have been they would have at least run this past him, not for his approval or anything, but just, hey, what do you think of this guy? Do you hate him? Do you love him? Do you whatever? Can you use a weapon like this? Is this too many tight ends on the field? There's no way something like that wouldn't come up with your designated QB1. But is taking target share? You can have Jake's question here, Chris, from Freiermuth. Is that a good thing?
I absolutely can be a good thing because, again, you can. Well, they're talking about like the rotation on the defensive side, keeping guys fresh. Well, now you can afford to have Pat Freiermuth more fresh, more often. And again, for the Steelers, I'm not necessarily worried about what's best for Pat Freiermuth because I'm sure that Pat Freiermuth isn't worried about what's best for Pat Freiermuth. He just got a contract last off. He's worried about what's best for the Steelers. And the Steelers right now have two legitimate receiving options at tight end, and now can have one of those guys on the field the vast majority of the time. So I think it's a good thing for this team. I don't see, like, he was in a target share last year anyway because they rotated 4 tight ends all the time. How often did we see Michael Pruitt and Connor Hayward as the 2 tight ends on the field? Now one of those guys is going to be at least Darnell Washington, who everybody wants to see more often, and possibly Jonnu Smith. There's going to be the better rotation tight end now.
All right. As we're losing Chris, we're going to be heading now into our business segment here and saying bye-bye to Chris. Safe travels for everybody in that. You have some precious cargo in there. By all means, be careful, take turns, make lots of stops and all that other stuff, and get back to us here in Pittsburgh safely. We'll have a lot more to talk about. Oh my goodness, in the days and weeks to come, now that we know how busy this time of year actually is in the NFL. We're going to take care of some business here on Double Shot of Steelers when we come back right after this. And we are back. Going to go through some stuff here. John comes in as a new member today. We were at 3,658 people as I'm speaking to you right now on this live thing. That's crazy. And the funny thing is that actually doesn't tell you the total number of people who've been in and out over the course of what's now 54 minutes into this program. We'll have that number later. If you're curious, we can share it with you tomorrow. That doesn't come at us right away. Elwin came in as a new member here. Russ dropped 10 gifts on everybody. Carol dropped 20 gifts. Zach with 5. Rick with 10. Matthew with 1 here. Mike came in referring to Pitt. He I think he meant the city when he referenced the college. That's you have to drop $5 to get away with that. I think that's the fine for doing that. 2014 membership so far. The goal is to have 3,000 of them. If you haven't heard that we moved the goalposts on this one, by the time the football flies on the 7th of September in East Rutherford, New Jersey, it's at 2014 there. The PEF came in with 5 gifts. Brett Caruso dropped a couple of bucks on us here. Russ with 10 more. Brett Caruso with another couple of bucks here. Snowman with a couple. Dylan with 5. Kerry's always good for 1. Alan Collins has been a member now for 2 full years as of today. He gets his shout out for that. I want to thank you guys for this and remind you that whenever you do get a membership here, you get it for the whole channel. It's not for double shot. You get it for everything that we do. My daily shots, you get it for the Ramon Foster show. You get it for Chris's Chalk Talk. You get it for Matt Williamson. It crosses the entire spectrum of everything. Yeah, so thank you for this. Thanks to Chris for jumping on here on his way back from vacation. And thanks to you guys for carrying. Wow, like this actually happened. This actually happened. I've probably done that 4 or 5 times over the past hour where I just go, wow, this is going to be some wild season, like in one direction or another, right? All right, guys, well, let's do it again. Let's do it again tomorrow. Maybe they'll make even more trades.